Now for the day's business news, Stephen Carroll is here. Let's start in France, where it's D-Day for Manuel Valls and his spending cut plans.
Yeah, there'll be 50 billion euros on the cabinet table later today when Manuel Valls presents his spending cuts plan to his ministerial colleagues. Now, we already have some details of where the axe will fall, but Manuel Valls is facing criticism from within his own party, particularly on measures that affect pensioners on low incomes. Now, no matter what the cuts are, it won't be an easy measure to sell, but the government has to do something to try to bring down the budget deficit, which is now forecast to reach 3.8% this year. Mark Thompson has the story.
It's a point most Socialist Party politicians agree on. 50 billion euros must be chopped from the French budget. The questions are how and where those cuts are being made. New French Prime Minister Manuel Valls has proposed slashing 18 billion euros from public sector workers and services, 11 billion from local authorities, 10 billion from healthcare, and a further 11 billion euros from social security. The savings would include freezing public sector salaries and social security payments until 2015. For some Socialist MPs, that plan would place too much of a burden on low-income households. They've come up with 3 alternative proposals. Among the suggestions, deputies want to delay some tax cuts to businesses or limit them to smaller companies until 2016. Both sides are keen to reach an agreement before Parliament votes on the plan next week.
We have made proposals with regards to those with small pensions and taxes on low-income households. I think we've been heard. The conversations with the government are ongoing.
The cuts are part of President François Hollande's Responsibility Pact, which aims to reduce taxes on businesses to help create jobs. All this while the government is committed to bringing the budget deficit to under 3% of GDP next year.
Now, that cabinet meeting getting underway in about 45 minutes here in Paris will, of course, be following the announcements from it for you here on France 24. To Portugal next, where it will be testing the markets later this morning as it prepares to exit its bailout programme. The country is selling 750 million euros of 10-year bonds today, a key test of how the country is viewed on the markets. The country's benchmark borrowing rate fell to around 3.7% yesterday, close to 8-year lows, in fact. This bond sale comes as inspectors from the Troika of international lenders are in Lisbon for one of their final assessments of the country's bailout. It's due to exit the programme in May, and the government will soon need to make a decision on how it's going to fund the country after that. The market reaction to this bond sale will be important, though, as analysts say things are starting to look up for the Portuguese economy.
Most macroeconomic indicators are improving. On the investment side, we had a pretty good last quarter of last year, and we're expecting good results for the first quarter of this year, with an increase in growth. Some even predict a rate of around 2%. So this is an improvement.
The disgraced rogue trader Jérôme Kerviel is suing his former employer for manipulating a witness in his trial. Kerviel was sentenced to 3 years in prison after causing almost 5 billion euros worth of losses at the French bank Societe Generale. His lawyers have now accused the bank of paying a witness more than €1 million to give evidence in its favour. Eric Cordel, Kerviel's former boss, had sued Société Générale for unfair dismissal after the scandal emerged, but dropped his case after the trader was convicted.
All right, Stephen, take us through what's happening on the markets.
Well, we'll start here in Europe, where it's a much flatter open, actually, after yesterday's gains that we saw on the European markets. You can see London and Frankfurt just nudging into the green there. AB Foods Group in London, the biggest gainer there on the market, up almost 5% after it announced that its main fashion brand, Primark, is to launch in the United States. A first store set to open in Boston by the end of 2015. Investors pretty pleased about that. Paris, you can see shares there just dipping into the red. Over in Asia today, a survey by HSBC of China's manufacturing sector showed a slight improvement in April, but still a sector that's in contraction. That left Hong Kong and Shanghai in the red. Tokyo, the best performer on the Asian markets today. Shares in Toyota, though, down, despite it reporting that it's sold a record number of cars in the first quarter of this year.
Right, now, Stephen, finally, a bonus for tax inspectors in the US, but not everybody deserves it.
Yeah, well, a report looking into the Internal Revenue Service in the United States found that it was paying $1 million in bonuses to tax inspectors who were in fact behind on their own taxes. On top of that, it's paying out another it paid out another 1.8 million to workers who are facing disciplinary action for things including misusing government credit cards for travel and fraudulently claiming unemployment benefits. Now, the government inspector who carried out this report said that the bonuses were inconsistent with the IRS mission to enforce tax laws. That probably goes without saying, really. On the whole, though, IRS employees not the worst. Just 1.1% of the Treasury Department, which includes the IRS, were in arrears with their tax returns. That's less than overall federal workers. About 3% of them are behind, and about 8% of workers in general in the United States. So not the worst offenders, but they can't really claim they don't know the tax deadlines. So we can imagine they have something catching up to do.
That's for certain. All right, Stephen, thanks very much for that business update for us.